Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review for We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Faizal. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post new videos every Sunday and every Wednesday and sometimes Friday. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box for links to all of my social media, including my Buddy Read Discord and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning quarterly book giveaways.
Saphira is the hunter, disguising herself as a man when she braves the cursed forests of the Ars to feed her people. Nasir is the Prince of Death, assassinating those foolish enough to defy his autocratic father, the king. If Saphira is exposed as a girl, all of her achievements will be rejected. If Nasir displays compassion, his father will punish him in the most brutal of ways. Both Saphira and Nasir are legends in the kingdom of Arawiya, but neither wants to be. War is brewing in Arawiya, and the Ars sweeps closer with each passing day, engulfing the land in shadow. While Saphira embarks on a quest to uncover a lost artifact that can restore magic to her suffering world and stop the Ars, Nasir is sent by the king on a similar mission: retrieve the artifact and kill the hunter. But the prize they seek may pose a greater threat than either can imagine.
We Hunt the Flame is a young adult fantasy, Middle Eastern inspired book, and it is the first book in a YA duology. The second book, We Free the Stars, comes out in January 2021. The way that I structure my fantasy book reviews is I talk about the world building, the characters, the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. Now I'm going to be talking about the world building. So in this book, we have a land that was at one time filled with magic. And due to a skirmish between these magical sisters and this lion of the night, magic is no longer in this land and it has been sealed away. It is our main character's job to try and go to this island to retrieve this magical artifact book to try and restore magic to the land. There are influences of magic throughout this land. For example, there is a magical forest that has manifested itself near our main character's home called the Ars, and there is also magic that is infiltrating the Sultan and causing him to become kind of evil and not do things that he would normally do. So despite the fact that this land doesn't have magic and magic is kind of sequestered away, it is seeping out and affecting certain things about this world. This world is ruled by a single sultan, and the sultan has basically given different parts of his empire to caliphs, who are kind of like governors. Our main character comes from a land that is constantly covered in snow, and this was never the case until magic left the land. Before that, there was heat and sand and dunes, and our main character is always wondering what it was like to have a climate like that rather than to be freezing and have snow all the time, which isn't the way it's supposed to be. I like this world because there was definitely a lot of lore thrown in there for a YA book, and I feel like it was very reminiscent of a fairy tale, and I really like that about this book because the creation of magic and the sustaining of magic and where magic went and that whole story surrounding that with the sisters just reminded me of a fairy tale. I also really liked the different creatures that were in the world. We have Ifrit, we have Jinn, we have the manifestation of certain magical abilities. For example, our main character has a very subtle magical ability. That's not a spoiler because she does know that she has this ability from the beginning. She just doesn't know that it's magical. So this world is definitely infused with a lot of magic. Our characters have to go to this magical island that is sealed off from the rest of the world because it is dangerous and because it still has magic and because it includes all of these magical creatures. So this is kind of like the epicenter of magic and where it has been placed so it wouldn't hurt anybody. Now I'm going to talk about the characters. So our main character is Saphira, and Saphira is a girl from this small caliphate, and she has always gone into the forest, the Ars, which is a very dangerous forest, to hunt for her people and bring them back food. She lives in a society where women are not expected to do that kind of thing, so she has to disguise herself as a man in a hood and is known as the hunter. Overall, I like Saphira. I felt that she was just a very strong protagonist. She was very level-headed. She thought before she made decisions. She didn't let emotions override her logic. She had a goal. She was going to get that goal done. She didn't care about the gender biases that her society placed upon her. I found her a very agreeable protagonist and a good point of view to have. And then we have Nasir. Nasir is the son of the Sultan, and he has been treated really badly for a lot of his life, and his father actually made him into an assassin. He's known as the Prince of Death, I think, if I remember correctly, and the Sultan sends him out on all of these missions to do his killing, and he sends Nasir to kill the hunter. Nasir just has a lot of conflicting emotions. He has been so separated from people for his entire life. He lost his mother. His father is cruel to him, that he doesn't believe that he is deserving of love and kindness because of all the murders that he has done. So we are in Nasir's head for half of this book as he is dealing with this internal conflict of not feeling like he deserves love or even compassion. And I felt that was a really interesting headspace to be in. And then we have a couple of side characters. So we get introduced to Benjamin, and Benjamin is a jinn, and he is Nasir's cousin or half cousin. So he brings a lot of like that older, wizened role to the story, even though he isn't conveyed as being that old physically looking, but he brings a lot of like wisdom to the group, and he also brings a lot of humor. He's one of those characters that knows the stakes are really high and that they're in a lot of trouble, but he's just like really nonchalant about it. And then we have Kifa, who traveled with Benjamin, and she is a soldier, one of the 9 soldiers who were to protect the royalty of her homeland. And she is just the traditional like a soldier, fighter, tough and rough, but she ends up adding an element of friendship to the group. And then we have Altair, and Altair is a general in the Sultan's army, and he ends up sending Altair with Nasir on this mission, and he definitely provided the most comedic relief out of all of these characters. He's just like a pretty boy, knows he's popular, acts like he doesn't take anything seriously. He's always giving Nasir a hard time because Nasir is so serious, and I really like their dynamic. I thought it was hilarious, and it really added just that element of lightheartedness to the story when it shouldn't have been lighthearted. And Altair, I think, will have a bigger role to play in book 2 based on some of the things that we learned about him. So now I'm going to talk about the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. And when I was making this list, like my list of dislikes was so much longer than my list of likes, but I'm just going to let you guys know ahead of time that despite the fact that there were a ton of things that I disliked about this book, overall, I had a lot of fun reading this, and I'll kind of tell you my reasons why I ended up rating it the way that I did at the end. But let's talk about the things that I liked. So the first things that I liked were the lore and the history of this land. Like I said, I thought it was very fairy tale-esque. It just added a lot of backstory, and it was whimsical and fantastical, and I just really liked hearing the stories of how things came to be in this world. Another thing that I really liked was the overall prose. I felt like the writing style was really beautiful. The descriptions that our author used, the figurative language that she used, the imagery was really well done, and there were just some lines in the book that I just thought were beautiful, and I loved them. And she really uses her prose to connect with the reader emotionally, or at least she did me. And the next thing I liked was how bingeable this book was. So this book was super easy to read, get into, have fun with, get immersed in. It's just one of those books that you can get into super quickly because it goes very, very fast. You find that you're loving the world, the characters are fun, and it's just one of those books that you can read in a couple days and have a great time reading. Now I'm going to talk about the things that I didn't like so much. So the first thing was the pacing. So I was about at 30% of this book, and I thought to myself, if this book doesn't pick up soon, I'm going to have to DNF, because it took a good 30%, a good 100 pages before this book finally captured my interest. And I don't know why it took that long. I don't think it needed to take that long. But then once that 30% mark hit and we are on the island and dealing with all of the creatures and on the quest, I felt like that went super, super fast. So I just wish maybe that the pacing would have been a little bit better. I would have liked to see less at the beginning and then the events of the middle and end kind of spread out. Because of the pacing, I felt like there wasn't a lot of time spent with certain characters. So we were introduced to Dean, which is one of Zafira's best friend and a love interest for her. And then we were also introduced to Kifa and Benjamin. And I felt like the fact that this book was so rushed in the middle and end that we didn't get enough time with these characters to really care about them. I found personally that I really didn't care much about the side characters other than Altair, but he was a character that we were with from the beginning. And I really did like Nasir and Zafira, idea, but the whole friend group wasn't given enough time to develop. So when certain things happened, I found that I really did not care. It didn't affect me emotionally. I was just like, okay, let's just move on with the plot. So there were certain things that happened with these side characters that were made to be a big deal, especially to our characters who are constantly ruminating over it. And I was just like, it didn't bother me because I don't really know who these characters are. We spent like a couple chapters with them. Next is the romance focus. So I knew right away that there was going to be a heavy romance focus in this book because, you know, it's two characters. One has to go get this artifact, the other one is hunting her, and I'm like, of course they're going to have a romance. And I don't want to say that the romance was a negative because at first I was a little annoyed with it, but as the story went on, like I kind of started shipping the romance and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm liking this. I don't want to say that the romance is a complete negative, but I just want to throw out there that it is a heavy part of the book. So if you're someone that doesn't like a lot of romance in your fantasy, then just beware going into this that it is a very heavy focus. But as the book went on, I found myself getting more and more comfortable with this part of the story and understanding why the author included it and what it'll probably mean for book 2. And I also feel like the romance was put in there to help Nasir kind of overcome his self-doubt and his constant feelings of not deserving love. So I understand why the author included such a romance. And the next thing is the vocabulary in this book, but I'm going to modify this as a negative because when I was writing out my pros and cons, I put that the vocabulary was a negative because I have an art copy of this book and I needed a glossary. There are so many terms that are either inspired by a Middle Eastern language or they're made up. I'm not sure if they're accurate in an actual word from a Middle Eastern language or not, but there's so many terms thrown in there and I had no idea what they meant, and I found that it detracted me from my reading. So I was like, this book needs a glossary. But then when I was looking up reviews, I saw that the finished copy had a glossary. So that was a negative to me personally, but if you have a book and you have the finished copy, then this might not be a negative for you because you can look up what those words mean, familiarize yourself with them instead of just like getting thrown a word like I did because I had an art copy. So it was a negative for me, but it might not be a negative for you. Lastly, I just want to talk about the tropes in this book. So this is a book that is filled with young adult tropes. If you are someone who is just kind of tired of young adult tropes, then just beware going in that this one is filled with them. So I put that as a negative, but here's the thing. I love young adult fantasy because of those tropes. I can read them over and over and over again and not get tired of them. So when I say that this book is tropey, I personally am totally okay with that because it's a part of the genre, it's a part of the appeal to the audience, and I expect that going into a YA fantasy. In the end, I ended up giving We Hunt the Flame 3 out of 5 stars, and I am looking forward to reading the sequel. Alright you guys, so that is it for my spoiler-free review for We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Faizal. Let me know in the comments if you read this and what you thought about it, or if you're planning on reading it, and I will see you guys soon in another video. Goodbye!